look at some of the fundraising numbers for some of the 2024 presidential candidates, a little insight in how the field is shaping up so far. My guest tonight is the CEO of Masonboro Strategies. He's Luke Ball. He's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five to talk about it. First time on the show. Luke, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I think one thing we know, if anybody's following this race, as we certainly are closely, early on people thought former President Trump was going to have a bit of a struggle here with the likes of Ron DeSantis in the race. But when you look at the polls right now, Real Clear Politics has him up by an average of about 33 points. There was a Trafalgar poll that came out that said 86% of Republicans were looking to vote for him. Clearly, the momentum seems to be at the former president's back right now.
Yeah, that Trafalgar poll coming from TPUSA students, and they're the ones that are going to be knocking the doors, making the phone calls, the folks who are going to be involved in grassroots activism. Folks like me are not going to be going out and knocking the doors. It's people who want to get an entry into politics. I think we have to consider the donation numbers too and the sources. See, Ron DeSantis' numbers, 15% come from small dollar donations and the rest come from large dollar donations. So he has to go back to these big time donors and explain to them why his campaign is not doing very well. They were banking on being able to edge Donald Trump on these indictments. Well, what's happened every time with an indictment is that Donald Trump's poll numbers have gone up, citing, as you've just said, 33, 35%, going as far up to 86%. So DeSantis' campaign does seem to be imploding, and that's not a political hot take necessarily. That's just a fact of the matter. They could right the ship at some point, but I don't know exactly how they're going to do that because the polling numbers are not in their favor, the donations are not in their favor, and people are starting to look at other candidates. You know, no one's leaving Donald Trump to go and vote for Ron DeSantis. People will leave Ron DeSantis to go vote for someone like Vivek Ramaswamy or Nikki Haley or even Chris Christie.
When you mentioned about the younger people getting out there and campaigning for these candidates, and the age differential, obviously, a lot's been made of that. Former President, 77. Governor DeSantis is 44 years old. But when you look at the issues that younger voters, younger Republicans, younger conservatives are going to carry with them to the polls, what are we looking at as top priorities for them?
You know, I think that young voters have been tired of the Democrats telling them that they are one direction, one party. If you're a young voter, you must lean a certain way. These are folks who inherently love their country. They're patriotic. They want to go out and accept personal responsibility. They're entrepreneurs. They want to start businesses. And slowly, as they start getting out of the house and start having to pay taxes and figuring out what the heck Social Security is and why are they taking hundreds and hundreds of dollars out of my paycheck, they become a little bit more conservative. And so young folks are concerned about a lot of the social issues going on, but they have good reasons for having these social issues on the forefront of their mind, and they're able to articulate and debate, and they're tired of going into college classes, in my opinion, and being saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of student debt. They're tired of going into these classes and being taught one way, and if you voice a concern or have some sort of a dissent, you're shouted out and labeled a bigot. They want to be able to have a conversation and live in an economy where they have some freedom, and so Republicans have inherently failed to talk to younger voters, and I think that's why you've seen a swell of support over the past few days with this 86-4% against Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump winning among the young voters because they love to hear some of these populist messages and messaging directly towards them. Republicans for too long have only messaged to the older folks in the party, but more and more we're seeing that Gen Z and millennials are defining the next voting bloc. And sometimes, if you look at the past midterms, defining who controls the Senate, literally who is in balance of the Senate and who's in the balance of the House of Representatives.
When you mentioned the issues like the social issues out there, we had another conservative on a couple of weeks ago when we talked about issues that young voters would be concerned with, certainly making it easier, but not necessarily easier, but making it possible to do things like buy a home. Which is clearly prohibitive in many corners of this country right now, I would say in this area especially. But when we talk about some of the other cultural issues, Governor DeSantis has been very, very high, and more importantly, his social team and the people around him have been high on the messaging of things like the Bud Light controversy and things of that sort when it comes to LGBTQ issues, the transgender issue. Are issues like that, are they playing to the wrong crowd when they're beating that drum as opposed to some of those other pocketbook issues?
I think some of the candidates focus too heavily on that. I think Ron DeSantis made a big mistake in the way that he went about the culture war in Florida because it did go to the economic stimulus of the entire state. And now he's on the defense right now. He's having to explain to his donors why he's flailing in the polls, and he's having to explain to Floridians why he's having such things like these home insurance companies withdrawing from the state of Florida, issues with this new National Guard that he's instituted in place. And so there's economic concerns, there are social concerns, but we've also been critical of how DeSantis has played out dealt with some of these issues. And to the issue of the younger voters in that generation, I think that it goes two ways. They are concerned about the social issues, but they're also concerned about the economic issues, because as they come into this more role of an adulthood and they start looking around and saying, wait, my parents, when I was growing up, they owned their house. Yeah. They had a job. They were able to pay for this. They didn't have to take out a second mortgage just to go buy a box of Cheez-Its. Why am I paying so much more than what my parents did? And I think that it leans heavily into the economic issue. As you remember, it's the economy stupid, as they used to say. And I think it's coming back around again.
Well, you know who said it's the economy stupid? That was Bill Clinton back in 1992. Right. And clearly a different message at the time, but it still resonated for voters going into that election cycle as well. Luke, we could talk a lot about this tonight. I got to let you go, but love to have you back sometime. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's Luke Ball, and we're back after this on The Final Five.